Hi friends, Michelle here with another video, and today it is time to talk about the books I read in July. I had a really great reading month. I had a couple surprises along the way, books I didn't expect that came out of nowhere and took me by surprise for both good and bad reasons, and some books that were absolute favorites of mine. Automatic 5-star reads. It was actually a pretty fantastic month. So settle in. I have a coffee here. I have a lot to tell you about, and I'll just go from my very least favorite all the way up to my favorite books of the month. The first I want to talk to you about is a book, a debut novel by an author who I absolutely loved a previous book of hers. In fact, it's one of my very favorite books of all time. The author I'm talking about is Sarah Winman, and the book is When God Was a Rabbit. This is her debut novel. It's a coming-of-age story. We're following a young girl as she navigates life with her family in the 1970s, I believe, and going forward 3 or 4 decades. The thing about this is that the writing was absolutely beautiful. However, not a whole lot happens. I mean, there are little interesting bits interspersed throughout the story, but yeah, I found it was just interesting enough to keep me reading, but overall kind of forgettable. So I don't even remember the main characters' names or anything like that, which is pretty unusual for me. Usually if I enjoy a book, I remember things about it. So yeah. It was very slow. If you're someone who likes a book with a really strong plot, you will absolutely hate this. I liked it. It was okay. I'm glad I read it. But if I were to hold this up beside the book of hers I absolutely loved, which is Tin Man, there's just no comparison. I mean, she grew a lot as a writer between this one, and her storytelling grew by leaps and bounds. So yeah, really slow. Really quiet book, really beautifully written, but I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars because, it was just kind of meh. Okay. Nothing like this one, which was a fantastic book. Highly recommend this one. If you're going to read anything by Sarah Winman, I'd start here. Moving along. Then I read also a book called Murder Road by Simone St. James. This is a creepy kind of a paranormal murder mystery thriller that is following a couple named April and Eddie as they're driving in the nighttime on this deserted highway, and they come across a hitchhiker. They pick her up because of course they do, and she's covered in blood. She's traumatized. They don't know what happened to her. So they decide to drive her to the hospital. Once there, they kind of freak out and think, well, they're going to think we did something to her, so we better get out of here. So they just leave her at the hospital, where she later dies, and a police investigation follows. So April and Eddie do fall under suspicion in this town and where they end up. And the story goes from there. It spirals into a bit of a paranormal mystery, and yeah, it was a light, kind of fun reading. It was not as intense as I would hope from a thriller, and the stakes weren't that high. The characters were kind of dumb, and but this was still a good time. It was one of those books that when you want something to read, but you don't want to have to focus intensely on what you're reading. It's a light, breezy, fun book. I rated it 2 out of 5 stars. And yeah, I way preferred her other book, The Sundown Motel, that I read from Simone St. James. And, but yeah, I'm still glad I read this. It wasn't bad enough for me to DNF, and it wasn't a 1 star, but it wasn't great. It wasn't awful. It was just kind of in between. So yeah, unless you're really a fan of hers, I can't really recommend this. I don't know. I didn't find it that compelling, but yeah, take that for what you will. And check it out if you're interested. If not, if it doesn't sound like your type of thing, you're not going to miss out on much with this one. Next up here, I have a book that I've been wanting to read for a while. It went through a phase on BookTube. It came out in 2021 and a few people were talking about it. And the book I'm talking about is called Mary Jane by Jessica Anya Blau. In this book, this is a coming of age story set in the 1970s, and we're following a young girl who lives with her very conservative parents. They're conservative in their politics, in their religious beliefs, and she lives a very kind of oppressed childhood. Like, her mother is very, very strict. Their conversations over the dinner table are very stunted. She feels like she can't really truly express herself. Then one day, Mary Jane gets a babysitting job with some neighbors down the street who are everything that her own parents are not. They are hippies, they are fun-loving, very liberal, very, very open-minded, and very kind. And she quickly bonds with this small family as she starts to babysit for them. The father, Mr. Cohn, in this story is a psychiatrist. He's a therapist who's kind of practicing his own business out of his garage at the home. And one day he announces that this famous, very famous couple are coming to live with them temporarily while the rock star husband is going through drug rehabilitation and therapy. His wife is also famous. She's a famous actress. So they tell Mary Jane, you cannot breathe a word of this to anyone. They want to respect their privacy, and nobody can know that we are having these people stay here while you're babysitting for us. So in taking this babysitting job, Mary Jane gets a lot more than she bargained for as far as adventure and having new experiences goes. And yeah, she learns how to look at her own parents in a different way. And we follow how she goes through her young life with the Cohn family as well as her own parents, and how things change and how she grows as a person. So it was really fun. It was really interesting. Again, this is another one that not a whole lot happens plot-wise, but the characters are fun and interesting enough that it keeps you reading. So I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. And yeah, check it out if you're so inclined. Next, I did read a nonfiction book. And this is one that I've been curious to read because I've seen the author in interviews recently. And it's a memoir. It's called Sociopath by Patric Gagne, or Gagne as she pronounces her name. And this is basically her story of growing up and not knowing what was wrong with her until she gets diagnosed as a sociopath. She also explores the differences between sociopathy versus psychopathy, how things have changed as far as diagnosing people from when she was a kid until now, and her struggles, what she went through, and how sociopathy is a spectrum disorder, like a lot of other mental health disorders or what have you. It's not like the stereotypical, when we think of a sociopath, sometimes we think of a murderous, violent, knife-wielding maniac, but that's not necessarily the case. That's, we often hear about the extreme versions of that spectrum, and not necessarily all the gray areas in between. And yeah, she is a real advocate for people going through this. And I think this book could help a lot of people to have hope and to know that they're not alone in this. And people like me, who it kind of opens your eyes to different things about sociopathy that you never would have known. I'm always curious about things like this, mental health, and I found this a really great read. She's got a lot of really interesting personal anecdotes, as well as what she learned as a therapist, and she is a really great advocate for people going through this, I believe. So yeah, I'm glad I read this. I really like a book, a memoir that can entertain me and educate me in equal measure, and I feel like this book did that. So yeah, 3 out of 5 stars. I would have rated it a little bit higher, but it was kind of slow in certain parts. So towards the end, it kind of lagged a little bit, but overall, yeah, I really enjoyed this book. So if you're like me and you're at all curious about mental health disorders or conditions, I would definitely check this one out. Okay, now we are getting into 4-star territory, and this book is one I have been meaning to read for a while. I did pick it up on my birthday book haul months ago, and this book is called Poor Dear by Claire Oshetsky. In this book, we are following a young little girl named Margaret and her little friend Agnes. One day while they're out playing, a horrible tragic accident occurs and Agnes passes away. And this book is following Margaret through her journey of grief, navigating the trauma of what happened, and how her mind creates this character named Poor Dear, who is an actual deer that appears to her in a bathrobe at certain points in her life when she's feeling stressed or upset. That's when Poor Dear will appear in the room with her and talk to her and berate her and make her feel bad. And yeah, so a very interesting premise, as you can well imagine. We're also following the other characters in this town where she lives, the mother, her aunts, the other townspeople who were there at the time of this accident, Agnes's family, and yeah, very different than anything else I've ever read. This reads like a fairy tale. It's not a children's book at all, not even close. It's very much a adult fable kind of a thing. And yeah, the subject matter is very heavy. However, there are little moments of levity mixed in there. So to just kind of break up the heavy subject matter, and we follow Margaret through her life from childhood to adulthood and just how that event, that trauma affected her whole life, her choices, her decision-making, her confidence, her career path, everything. So yeah, fascinating. We go a little bit back and forth in time from her childhood to her current day Margaret and what she's up to. And yeah, I found this really interesting, really hard to put down. So if you're at all curious, I would highly recommend this book, Poor Dear by Claire Oshetsky. 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, this book now is the highest rated book on my TBR, probably. It has been. It's a very highly rated book on Goodreads, and I've seen a lot of people talk about this on BookTube. Most recently, a while back, Chris from the first chapter had recommended this one very highly, so I couldn't wait to read it, and it really surprised me. The book I'm talking about is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Finally, I've read this, and it was not at all what I thought it would be. I didn't know a whole lot going in, but just from the cover and from the, seriousness of a space mission of some kind, I thought, okay, this must be a really intense, very serious, very action-packed kind of a thrill ride. It wasn't that at all for me, but I still really enjoyed it. To start this book, we're following a man who wakes up in this very strange room with 2 corpses. They're in hammocks kind of attached on the wall, and he doesn't know where he is. He finally figures out that he's on a spaceship and he's in deep space, and he has no idea why or how he got there. So that's how we start off. The man in question is a character named Ryland Grace. He seems like a very young person. He has a lightness of being and a sense of humor and very corny, cheesy dialogue that are very endearing. And he seems a lot younger than he actually is. He's a school teacher in his 30s, and he's been selected for this mission because he made a discovery that made him very valuable to the government, let's put it that way. So he, not only was he a very likable character, but what happens to him in space, as well as the events that led up to him going on this mission, were really interesting to me, really fun to read. And the only parts I found kind of slow were the really sciencey bits where they were explaining how the procedures and how they were doing the experiments in the lab and everything like that. I didn't find that as interesting, but I loved the characters and their conversations and the authority figures who he had interacted with, and as well as Ryland Grace's inner monologue when he's in space and he's talking to himself and, you know, figuring out what he's going to do. And the mission that he's on is to save humanity from certain extinction. So yes, it's a very high stakes mission, but this book was so lighthearted and charming and funny and fun, and it was just delightful. I don't even know what else to say. Like, it reads very much like a YA book, although I'm sure this is an adult novel, but it just was so kind of, a lot more frivolous and light than I expected it to be. I expected it to be a lot more intense and heavier and, you know, given the subject of the extinction of humanity. But yeah, it was fun and funny and really heartwarming in the end. So yeah, it was, like I said, delightful. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. And I would recommend this to a lot of different people. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad I finally read it. Next up, I want to talk about a book that I heard about thanks to Oprah. This is an author I have read from before. I read his previous books, She's Come Undone, as well as I Know This Much Is True, back in the 90s and 2000s respectively. And the author I'm talking about is Wally. This book is his new release called The River is Waiting. Now, when I was reading this book, I was so into it and enjoying it so much that I had to just make a little short video. Not sure if you caught that, but yeah, this is a page turner and a half. So I'll just set up the story and give you an idea what it's about. Chapter 1, we meet a man named Corbin. He lives with his wife, Emily, and I think they're toddlers. They have twin 2-year-olds, a boy and a girl named Nico and Maisie. And Corbin has recently lost his job as a commercial artist, so he's struggling to find work. Emily is going to work as a teacher, and she's supporting the family while Corbin stays home and looks after their little kids. Now, Corbin has a drinking problem. He has always had a bit of a problem with alcohol, but this job loss has really kicked his addiction into full swing. He begins drinking in the daytime while he's looking after the children. He also begins to take prescription drugs. I believe it's Ativan or something like that, some kind of a sedative that he's taking while he's drinking alcohol. And he thinks he's hiding it pretty well. Yeah, so this is where the story starts. And one morning he's, making the kids breakfast and kissing his wife goodbye as she leaves for work. And he has plans to drive the children over to his mother-in-law's place for the day, ostensibly while he job hunts, and then he's supposed to pick them up afterward, when in reality the only plan he actually has is to stay home and drink all afternoon. So yeah, anyway, he straps in his daughter into the car, and as he's doing so, the neighbors across the way come and they wave him down and wave him over, and they have a little visit, a little chit chat and catch up on everything. And after a few minutes go by, Corbin says to them, well, I have to go. I have to get my kids over to my mother-in-law's. I'm in a hurry. So he gets in the car and starts backing out of the driveway. And as he's backing out, his car feels some resistance. And so he kind of floors it and backs over whatever it was, the lump that was on the driveway, which turns out to be his son, Nico. So this enormous tragedy happens in chapter 1, and this book follows the ripple effects and the aftermath, the fallout from this horrible event. We follow Corbin as he navigates life after the event. We follow his wife, his mother-in-law, his own mother, his own father. We follow a therapist who is working with this family. She's a fantastic side character. I really enjoyed her parts. And this is a story of how people navigate this kind of thing in life. It's about forgiveness. It's about life in prison. We follow Corbin. He does end up going to jail. And so this this book is about so many things. Everything that happens after this one tragic event. And just a fantastic page turner of a book. Really heartfelt, really emotional, but it also has some humorous parts in it as well. And it's a very kind of realistic look at relationships. And so if you've ever read from Wally Lamb before, I don't have to say any more. But yeah, this was just a great read. I really enjoyed this one. Solid 4 out of 5 stars. Would highly recommend. Yeah, it's emotional, but it's somehow hopeful. It's not depressing all the way through. I have to say that. So yeah, it was a great book. Next up, I found this next book, which is a new release. It just came out in 2025. I was browsing in a bookstore just to kill time, and this cover jumped out at me. It was only $7, so I mean, what could I do? It had to come home with me. And the book I'm talking about is The Oligarch's Daughter by Joseph Finder. Wow. Okay, so I've never read any Joseph Finder books before, but this is a true suspense thriller in the purest form of the word suspense thriller. Like, what a ride. It hooked me from the first page. So we're following a man in the opening of this book, a guy named Grant, who's with his girlfriend making dinner in their kitchen, in their home in New Hampshire. And Grant gets a phone call from his buddy Luke, who owns a deep sea fishing operation. Like, he takes tourists out he's a charter fishing boat guy. So he takes tourists who pay big bucks to go out deep sea fishing. And he calls our main character, Grant, and says, I'm not feeling good. I have this client coming in. Do you mind taking him out for me on the boat? Because I am too sick. I can't make it. So Grant says, sure, I'll go. And Grant is also an experienced fisherman and guide and so forth. He builds boats and such. So Grant meets this guy at the marina and takes him out on the boat. And they get out, and we soon discover that this client is no ordinary client, and Grant is not exactly what he appears to be either. The guy that he's taken out on this fishing boat is actually a Russian assassin who has come to kill him. We don't know why. We just know that Grant is not actually Grant, but a character named Paul. Paul Anderson is his actual identity, and this guy's been sent from Russia to come and kill him on this boat. He tells him to drive the boat out further so that he can dump his body in the middle of the ocean and nobody will find it. A struggle ensues, a spear gun misfires, and Grant, aka Paul, ends up killing this assassin on the boat. He then he drives over to some area that's known to be shark infested, dumps his body off in the water, throws his cell phone in there as well, keeps his car keys, and starts heading back to shore, trying to think of, what am I going to do? What's my cover story going to be? What the heck? Like, he is in complete shock, but he stops on the way and catches a fish so he can have the cover story that the client never showed up and he just ended up fishing by himself. So he returns back to shore. And then we find out who this Paul Anderson really is. And we go 5 years back in his past when he was working as a hedge fund manager. He works in high finance. Anyway, we follow him in New York, and 5 years previous when he meets a Russian young lady named Tatiana, who is the oligarch's daughter. So we go back and forth between 5 years ago, what got Paul into this mess where people are trying to assassinate him, how he met Tatiana, their romance, their relationship, how it developed, how he got involved with her father, this multi-billionaire Russian oligarch guy, how they get married, and how he comes to work for her family business. We then go back to current day Paul, aka Grant, who has just murdered this assassin, and he is on the run. He heads back to warn his girlfriend to get the heck out of there, because these Russians are already there when he gets back and looking for him. So he takes off in his truck. He ditches the truck, runs through the bush. He's hiding out in the forest, planning to make his way eventually up to Nebraska. So we've got heart-pounding action of him trying to survive in the wilderness and escape detection from these Russians that are after him. And then we're going back in time 5 years to how he got in this situation. This is a fascinating book. I loved the story of Paul, his work life, how he got involved with Tatiana, their relationship, everything that happened with the Tatiana's family, the Russian oligarch, and how he came to get himself in a whole lot of trouble. Great, really fast-paced book. I couldn't put it down. I absolutely love this book. I love the ending. This book was blurbed by Stephen King, among other people, Lee Child, David Baldacci, Karen Slaughter, Lisa Gardner, Linwood Barkley, and I can see why. Fantastic. If you like a really fast-paced kind of a novel, and I'm not one to read a spy novel, and so I wasn't sure that I would like this, but this is not necessarily a spy novel. It has international intrigue and romance and human relationships and like suspense, like I said. It's a survival story. It's all the things. So yeah, I couldn't not give this 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. One of my favorite books I've read this year so far, The Oligarch's Daughter by Joseph Finder. And I will definitely read more from him in the future. This brings me to the last book I want to talk about. And I'm laughing because this book is a very polarizing book. Some people love it. Some people absolutely hate it. And I've watched several video reviews since I finished reading it, which I tend to do on YouTube. I'm always interested to see what other people think of it. And it's just astonishing. The level of vitriol in the comment sections of some of the review videos for this book were just crazy. Like, especially from some women. Like, some women out there seem to take personal offense to this story for some reason. And yeah, so I love a book like that. I love a book that's somewhat controversial, that has people talking. And the book I'm talking about is All Fours by Miranda July. Now, I had picked this up at a thrift store a while back and I was wanting to read it. And then Dwayne from the Reading Room 1972 chose this book for the buddy read that myself, Isabel from Isabel Reads, as well as Dwayne, we all read it together in July, and we will be discussing it live on Isabel's channel on Tuesday, August 5th. Please tune in if you're interested to hear what we all have to say. It should be a very lively discussion. So anyway, here are a brief overview of my thoughts of this book. I'm not one who normally annotates books, but being that we're having a discussion and being that there were so many noteworthy passages in here, I just had to put my flags in there. So I'll just give you an idea what this is about. We're following an unnamed protagonist, a 45-year-old woman who's in midlife and navigating the ups and downs of that. She's married and has a young child, and they live in the Los Angeles area. One day, at a dinner party, her and her husband are talking with their friends, and this sparks a desire in her to go on a road trip. And she gets the idea that she's going to get in the car, do something she's never done, that she never imagined that she would do, which is to drive from Los Angeles to New York City and back over the course of 2 or 3 weeks. So she's planned this. She's going to do this by herself, independently, with nobody along for the ride. And her husband's fine with it. He's like, sure, go on, enjoy yourself. And we'll be here when you get back, and can't wait to see how it goes for you. So she leaves, and she gets about 30 miles away from where they live in a small community called Monrovia in California. And she decides to stop for a break, stop for gas, have some lunch. While she's getting gas, a young man, somewhat attractive young man, comes over and starts cleaning her windshield. This kind of gives her pause, and she's like, kind of having thoughts about this guy, like thinking that he's kind of attractive to her. Doesn't think much more of it. She kind of spends the rest of the day meandering around and decides, you know what? I think I'm just going to get a motel room. So she gets herself a motel room in this town, and that's where she ends up staying. She does not make it any further than 30 miles away from her home. While she's there, she starts to develop an infatuation for this young man who she's deliberately trying to bump into. She knows that he works at a rental car place, a Hertz rental, across from the gas station, or close to the gas station where she first saw him. So she takes to hanging around where she can accidentally kind of bump into him. The young man named Davey is also kind of seems a little bit enthralled with her. So they develop a friendship. And he is also married. He has a young wife who's an interior decorator, and her name's Claire. And their dream is to buy a home. So he's sharing this with our unnamed lady protagonist. And our main character decides, you know what, I'm going to give this motel room a makeover, and I'm going to hire your wife, Claire, to decorate it for me. I'll pay her $20,000, and you guys will have your down payment for your house. So Davey takes her up on it. Claire is all in, can't wait to do this and get paid for it. So she redecorates her motel room like in a really lavish kind of Parisian style. And the motel owner at first doesn't know what to make of it, but then once he sees the finished results, he's kind of on board with it. He's okay with it. He's like, yeah, I can charge double for this suite, and this has been a great improvement to this room. So he ends up being fine with it. But that's not where the relationship between our main character and Davey ends. I'm not going to say a whole lot more, but this turn of events sets our main character off on a journey of self-discovery. She has a kind of a sexual awakening. She learns about intimacy, about what she really wants in her life. We meet interesting side characters. I absolutely loved a character named Jordy, who is her best friend, who has some very sage advice. And the whole while that she's staying in this motel room, she's deceiving her husband and child. She's keeping in touch with them, but pretending that she's at certain junctures along her journey to New York so that they don't suspect anything. So there's that. And yeah, this book was so interesting to me. I could not wait to see what was going to happen next. It was so crazy. And I think in a lot of ways, this character was really relatable. Like, she does things that a lot of people only think of doing in here, in real life. You know, I'm sure most people have had an idea or an urge to do something really impulsive, but maybe for whatever reason, like common sense or logic has stopped them from doing such an extreme thing. But a lot of people have certainly thought about it or fantasized about it, and she takes action and follows her desires in here. So yeah, it also explores the themes of midlife and navigating menopause, which is a big thing. And, you know, your physiological changes as well as your psychological changes that you go through during that phase of life. Her marriage. What does intimacy mean? How well can you actually really know a person, even someone that you've been married to for 30 years? You only get to know what they share with you, right? You cannot read someone's mind. And yeah, this is wild. There were some parts in here that just I had to stop and think about for a few minutes and let them sink in. This book has a lot of graphic sexual scenes, some kind of vulgar and distasteful scenes in here that people would be really put off by. I didn't mind them, as it was perfectly in line with the character and her mental state and what she was going through. So that didn't bother me, but just as a heads up, if you're planning on reading this, there's that to consider. But yeah, I absolutely love this book. And it's another one that kind of made me think about certain things a different way. And just, I love how this author really gets that people are complex. There is so much nuance in people's personalities, their perceptions of life. And, you know, it's also about not judging people, being more open to the possibilities of life, taking chances, that kind of thing. I was also, like, in the end, I reread the ending a couple times and let it sit with me. And at first, I wasn't sure how I felt about it. But after a little while, I thought, yeah, I really am okay with how things wrapped up. Because with this kind of a complicated story, I mean, we had so many things going on with this character. We had questions about her marriage, how she's deceiving her loved ones, their relationships. We had her friendship with her best friend and the advice that was falling on deaf ears. We had her disrupting the marriage of Davy and Claire. We had her future, her job was hanging in the balance. Like, you know, is she going to lose her job? What's she going to do for money? And yeah, actually, no, she doesn't really have to worry about money. They have money, but so yeah, there was that. And how this author tied all those loose ends together in the end was really satisfying to me. After I sat with it for a while, like I said, and yeah, I couldn't not give this 5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a fantastic book. It's one that I possibly could read again. I'm not generally someone who reads books more than once, but this one was so interesting. And I have a feeling that I might get more out of it the second time. So yeah, thanks for choosing this one, Dwayne. I love this one. And I'm really happy I read it. It was a fast read. It's not that long of a book. Like, it's only, yeah, it's just under 300 pages. So if you're at all curious, I would urge you to pick it up from the library. If you don't want to actually buy the book, yeah, and I had heard a lot of great things from people like Sarah Jessica Parker and other people online and stuff. But like I said, I've also heard really negative things about this. So I'm glad I jumped in and read it. And yeah, definitely one of my favorite books of the year so far. So can't wait to talk about it with Isabel and Dwayne and hear their thoughts. And for sure, my favorite book in July. And like I said, one of my favorites of the year. So with that, this brings us to the end of a very long video. Thanks for listening to me. And so yeah, my 3 main recommendations out of the month of July were, of course, this one, All Fours by Miranda July, The Oligarch's Daughter by Joseph Binder, a thrill ride of a book, The River is Waiting by Wally Lamb, which was a mellow, emotional ride, lots of ups and downs, and a really great read. And then I would also recommend Project Hail Mary as well as Poor Dear by Claire Oshetsky. I think these are pretty solid reads as well, and a lot of people might really like them. So thanks so much for hanging out with me and listening to how my reading month went in July. I hope you had a great reading month, and let me know in the comments if you've read any of the books I mentioned or if you plan to. Thanks. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.